G'day, I'm Matt Burdon. I just started working at Kaztec Rural Supplies. I'm a qualified butcher. In last week's video we showed you how to section the lamb and cut up the legs. Now this week I'm going to show you how to do the mid-loins and the loin section. This is how we started with our whole piece. All I want to do to start with is just split him straight down the middle on the saw, and then we can work from there. Yep. So on the saw we just keep the flaps wide apart and just cut straight as we can down the middle. So now we've got the loin cut in half. I just like to take the flap off. Basically, just leave a nice tail on your chop, as long as you want the top chops, and just cut him about halfway through. Once you've got the flap taken off, there's two sections to the loin. There's your rib loin, and then there's your mid loin, where you've got your fillet underneath as well. I like to just split that straight in half. So now we've got your mid loin chops, which is your good end of your rib loin. I'll just take the little bit of fat out, and then I'll mark the other side up for chops. Just take him out. Careful of your fillet there. Then I'll just turn him over. Once again, as with the chump chops, about thumb thickness. Just marking through there. And that takes out your bone dust on your chops, makes them a nice chop. And then just cut him straight through on the bandsaw. Once again, just keep them, I just pull them apart, spread them apart, and keep your fingers and hands out of the way. And because you've marked your chops through, you get a little bit of bone dust on the bottom, but the rest is a nice, presentable chop. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make a rack of lamb with your rib loin end. This is the end without the fillet. To do that, we just take we cut the chine bone off about halfway. I'll show you on the saw, and then we'll move from there. So when I'm cutting the chine bone through, I just put him on an angle, cut him about halfway along. You'll see in a second. So I take the chine bone off, and then I make it nice to carve later on when it's cooked. So now we've got our rack of lamb. Just turn him over, and about a quarter of the way down, just make an incision, cut all the way along there, along your ribs, and just clear that away. That's just a bit off cut. And then we want to mark down through the ribs. They call this process Frenching. So you just cut down along the ribs, back and up through. So now we've got our rack of lamb. You can either roast that whole, or if you like lamb cutlets, all you do is just a matter of cutting down through there. And because we took that chine bone off earlier, you can just cut straight through there now, and there's your nice lamb cutlet. So now I'll show you how to cut rib loin chops. We just start with our other half of our loin, and we just take the flap off there once again. To get our nice rib chops to cut through there, I'll just make a small cut through the ribs to break the ribs. So now we just take that bone out, just down the bone, down the line. Once again, I just mark through there with my knife, nice thickness, and then cut him back on the bandsaw. And there we have our nice rib loin chops. By taking that bone out, your tail will curl around, fit a lot more in the frying pan. So I hope that's helped in understanding how to cut up some loins and make some nice cuts and racks of lamb. Next week's episode we're going to be cutting up the forequarter. If you have any questions or queries, don't hesitate to come in and see myself or the boys in the shop at Kaztec. Help you out.